everyone, and welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us today for this live stream event. My name is Alexia, and I am the program manager of the Microsoft Reactor Toronto. I will be sharing session resources with you in the chat. But before we begin, I'd like to quickly review two items: our code of conduct and event guidelines. First, please take a moment to review our code of conduct. Microsoft Reactor seeks to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. And secondly, our event guidelines. This session is being recorded and will be available on demand to the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel in about 24 to 48 hours. I will share the link in the chat for our channel. And if you've not been on a live stream through YouTube before, please note that you must create an account on YouTube in order to access and interact in the chat. You can set that up now. And if you're unable to use the chat but have questions, feel free to reach out to us through social media or on Meetup. Which brings us to today's session. I'm going to bring in our speaker for the day, Zach and Sean. Hi, how is everyone doing?
Hey, Alexia, good morning. Doing great.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here with us today. It is great to have you for episode 4 of CloudOps with Azure. And yeah, thanks again, and take it away.
Awesome. Yeah, well, we're happy to be here. So I'll just say hi very quickly and introduce myself. So my name is Zach Karabedian. I'm a product architect with Spot by NetApp. I've been with the team now almost 3 years, and I'm excited to talk to you guys today about some Azure scaling hacks and a little bit of a deep dive on CD and kind of an overview of the landscape and some things to keep in mind. And of course, I want to introduce Sean as well. Sean?
Hi, I'm Sean Harris. I'm the Developer Relations Lead at Spot by NetApp. I've come from a background of 20 years of IT professional and DevOps, and I've been with Spot for about 9 months, leading our developer relations and developer experience efforts. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. So let's jump right into it. So I want to do another quick introduction, a little bit more about me, and just maybe go over why I might appear a little more sleep deprived than normal. So I have 2 kids. I have a 20-month-old son and a 6-week-old daughter at home. So they keep me on my toes. And as you can see over here, my son is also my QA environment. So he does all my validation for all the workshops that we build together. And of course, we have a dog who is my son's best friend. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn and put my email below as well. And I also am the person at Spot who builds and maintains all of our hands-on workshops. So we'll dive into that in just a little bit. But yeah, let's jump right into it. So I want to do a quick introduction about Spot by NetApp. Introduce the term CloudOps if you're not familiar with it. So CloudOps is really like a set of best practices for operating in the public cloud today. So operating in the public cloud usually brings us into 3 main focus areas: DevOps, FinOps, and SecOps. In many cases, it might be one team that manages all of this. But more often than not, there's a lot of pressure that gets put on DevOps, and that's one of the areas that we're going to deep dive on today. So just to level set here, go over the agenda of what we're going to cover. We're going to talk a little bit about cloud trends in software delivery. How does Kubernetes and microservices change that landscape? Some of the challenges with that. Some key questions to ask yourself if you're a DevOps engineer or a service owner. And then I'm going to be happy to jump into an Ocean CD demo, which is our continuous delivery solution for Kubernetes. And of course, we'll leave some questions at the end, and feel free to drop your questions into the chat as well. Keep them coming. Okay, so jumping into some trends that we see in software delivery. First and foremost, I think there's a statistic out there that about 96% of companies are either evaluating or currently using Kubernetes. So there's a massive shift from monolithic applications into microservices, which in turn is a lot more things to maintain for DevOps, right? So I want to say, like, gone are the days where you're doing this like big monthly release where you have like your whole DevOps team on standby. You're doing this big release. You're announcing to your customers there's a new version coming out. The reality is today it's something that happens dozens, hundreds, if not thousands of times a day that you're deploying new code into the environment. And it's a delicate process. And more often than not, all of our customers that, or not all of our, most of our customers are telling us that there's very little automation in their pipelines, and it's something that they're looking to improve on. And of course, with that, there is like a big emphasis on being able to like shift left and catch those issues with that new version of code earlier into your pipeline before it becomes like a major catastrophe into your production environment. So usually that burden is going to be falling onto DevOps engineers. They're the ones that are tasked with now maintaining all of these different microservices, being able to support deployments. And there's usually like a pretty intense ratio of DevOps engineers to developers, right? It could be a team of 5 DevOps engineers supporting a group of 100 developers. So they're usually outnumbered, and that's why there's such a strong emphasis on automation. And with CD pipelines, things get pretty complicated before you even get to the deployment. So with your build environment, there's so many differences in how you need to manage your build pipelines compared to like monolithic applications. And then once you actually get to the deployment, that's where things get even more complicated because everything is changing in terms of what you're looking at, right? You're no longer looking at like host level metrics for like a monolithic application. You're looking at things like, how are my individual containers behaving? How are those metrics looking? You might be using new tools to monitor those metrics. And at the end of the day, there's usually a lack of confidence with your ongoing deployment. So what does that exactly mean for both like R&D and the business? Of course, it's time consuming, right? Because as you're migrating to Kubernetes and monolithic application from monolithic applications, you're probably spending a lot of time troubleshooting, trying to fix things, trying to understand where is that coming from. You might not have the time to figure out, okay, this is like a recurring issue with X, Y, and Z services, and we need to work on that. So on the business side, of course, there's it's a lot of time and effort your developers are spending, or your DevOps is spending, trying to maintain everything. And of course, any production incident could cost the business thousands of dollars in a matter of minutes if something is broken. And of course, there's no hiding that DevOps talent is hard to find, right? And that's why there's usually an outnumbered ratio of DevOps to developers. And all of that leads up to our Ocean CD product. So I'm going to take a step back and talk a little bit about our Ocean product. Ocean is our flagship offering for running containers in the cloud at Spot by NetApp. And what Ocean does is it provides a serverless compute experience for running containers in the cloud, in that you deploy our controller and we automatically take over all of the infrastructure scaling based on the pod's requirements. So we figure out what is the best virtual machine type and family and lifecycle based on the pod's requirements, and we optimize that within your clusters. So what we're doing at Spot by NetApp is we're continuing to build out on our Ocean suite of Kubernetes offerings which is why we have built Ocean CD. So Ocean CD is our continuous delivery solution for Kubernetes applications. And if I could summarize like what our main goal is with Ocean CD, it's allowing developers to deploy more and fail less. So how exactly do we do that? We're trying to make it super easy for you to integrate multiple metrics from whatever monitoring solution you're using and build progressive deployment pipelines with ease. And of course, everything that we're building is multi-cloud, multi-cluster, and a SaaS-based solution. So where we come into play is after your CI process runs and you're looking to get into the deployment itself, once that apply is made of the new version, we have a controller running within your cluster. And what that controller is responsible for doing is always listening, detecting those changes. So when we detect a change to a new version of your application, we go back to our SaaS layer. And what our SaaS layer is going to tell us is, okay, what do we do with this new version? Is this a canary deployment? Is this a rolling update? Should I check Prometheus? Should I check New Relic, Datadog? What are the metrics that I want to check? And all of that can be reused over and over again. So this will make a lot more sense when I jump into the demo, but I do want to just do that quick introduction of the product as it stands today. And why we built Ocean CD specifically. So at Spot by NetApp, we are a customer-obsessed company. And we had a lot of customers reach out to us and tell us, hey, look, you guys are already optimizing my infrastructure. And is there anything that you can do to take that a step further and optimize my software delivery process? They expressed a lot of the challenges that I mentioned at the beginning of, the natural phase of moving to Kubernetes and the challenges as it relates to CD. So as any good customer-obsessed company would do, we said, sure. So we hired a dedicated team to, begin researching, talking with customers. And that's probably been around 18 months or so that we started this initiative. And today we have a full-blown production-ready product that's being used in production by many customers. So why are customers most interested in Ocean CD? Because we make it really easy to go from like a basic Kubernetes rolling update, which is like kind of the standard practice, easiest way to get up and running with CD. We make it really easy to go to canary deployments in a matter of minutes. So you'll see why in just a second. And of course, we give the ability, complete confidence in everything that you're doing within Ocean CD by integrating with all the different metrics and monitoring tools right out of the box. We're multi-cloud, multi-cluster, and within like a single pane of glass, you'll have like that single source of truth as to everything going on within your clusters, and then like aggregated like DORA dashboards and things like that to see how everything is behaving over time. So that really makes us appealing for like two main groups. Of course, the DevOps engineers, right, who are trying to reduce that manual work, catch those incidents in those early stages, but also the service owners, because a service owner is more likely than not going to be a specialist in CD, and they want the ability to see how their application behaves as it deploys. They're probably the ones that are going to need to take action on something if there's an issue. And what Ocean CD does is exactly that. So you don't need to be a CD expert. The DevOps team can maintain these strategies for you, and you can just be told by your DevOps team, point your application to this strategy with Ocean CD, and we'll take it from there. So we'll deep dive on that in just a moment, but those are really the main things. And this is the last visual I want to show is just how Spot by NetApp, we're making Ocean our one-stop spot for all things Kubernetes management. I mentioned like at the very core, we have our Ocean engine, which is like scaling the containers in the cloud and giving you that serverless compute experience. On top of that, we have our Ocean CD product, which is all things continuous delivery. And then we also have our Ocean for Apache Spark program that is focused on optimizing Spark over Kubernetes. And all of these solutions don't require you to replace anything with like your control plane. You're just deploying our controllers, and we're helping optimize things along the way there. So before we jump into a live demo, I want to pause here to see if there's any questions so far. Or Sean, anything else you want to add as well?
Nope, I think you got it all. I think that, yeah, and I don't see any questions coming through either.
Okay, so let me switch screens here, and I'm going to pull up the Spot by NetApp console, and specifically, I'm going to just be focused on our Ocean CD product, but I do just want to show, when I talk about cloud ops and best practices for optimizing your cloud, there's a lot of considerations that need to be made, and a lot of different products that are necessary for helping you do exactly that. So don't be afraid to check out our other products on our website, which I'll show at the end here. But I'm going to deep dive on our Ocean CD offering first. So first, when you're going into our Ocean CD product, you'll get a little bit of a welcome, what it's all about, get you up, a little guide to get you up and running. So we have a pretty slick UI that will help you onboard your first cluster. And then I mentioned these dashboards. So if you're a service owner or part of a management team that's trying to figure out like how efficient are my deployments, how many of them are working without any incidents, or do I have any like specific clusters or services that are causing me repeated issues? So within Ocean CD, you can filter for like all of your different clusters, drill down, slice and dice however you want to look at it. And then we'll be able to show you, all the metrics as it relates to your deployments. We also have a lot of customers that ask about how do we, track these metrics in a monitoring tool of our own. There's a bunch of different ways to get all of this data from our platform, whether you want to use our API or another means to export this data. Of course, we're happy to get you the data in whatever format you would like to see. So before we can actually start triggering deployments, I mentioned like that the need to deploy our controller within your cluster. So that's all something that can happen in a couple clicks. So when you're ready to onboard your first cluster, you'll essentially give us a name for the cluster that you're going to run. We'll give you a YAML to deploy within your Kubernetes cluster. That YAML deploys our operator and everything that you need to start triggering your first rollout. And then we have a few different entities as it relates to Ocean CD. So what these entities do is allow you to define how you want how you want your deployments to behave. So this is where you're going to define that I want to use a rolling update or canary deployment, things like that. And when you click into a strategy, it's going to tell you or tell us like what metrics am I most concerned about, and how much of the traffic do I want to shift to that first phase. So I also want to pull up how this can also be maintained on infrastructure as code. So we have a CLI that lets you maintain all of our Ocean CD entities within code. So I mentioned the strategy. So, the strategy is where you'll be able to define, okay, I want to go out and do this verification. What a verification is actually checking a specific metric. So if I'm using something like Prometheus, I'm going to set up Prometheus with the Prometheus server, and I'm going to say this is the local DNS name for the Prometheus server, so I can actually go out and do my queries against it. And then I'll actually define what the actual queries are as it relates to Prometheus. So I can use my own metrics that I care about, something I'm already looking at on like a dashboard and things like that. And I define success and failure conditions. So the success and failure conditions are what is going to drive every single rollout, because if anything at any point doesn't look exactly how you expect it, we'll actually automatically roll back the deployment. So those are just a few of the different entities. And again, I wanted to just call out that everything can be created and maintained through our CLI and our API or the UI. So the neat thing about these entities is they're all reusable, which will save your team a lot of time in the end, because what that allows you to do is, if you're an application owner that maybe isn't a CD expert, you can just maintain like a individual rollout spec, which is your way of saying, okay, this is my deployment that I maintain and I'm responsible for. And I'm going to check or point to this strategy. So I will just do canary or rolling updates, blue, green, whatever the case might be. If something goes wrong, abort the rollout. So once you have your entities defined, that is when you can actually go into the rollouts themselves. So what exactly triggers a rollout is what I mentioned earlier, which is anytime that we detect a ongoing change to your deployment, we will actually go back to our SaaS layer, detect the change, and figure out what to do with it. So let's take this first example here. So when we detect this change, the first thing we're going to do here for like a canary deployment is shift 20% of the traffic. Of course, we're going to have like two different Kubernetes services that we're flipping between and splitting traffic between in that first stage. If everything works as expected, I move on to this next phase of my deployment. So that next phase of this deployment is going to do a lot of different verifications along the way. So you might be looking at different Prometheus queries, Datadog queries, and what these queries do once we get the data back is we'll show what how it's behaving, and if it meets your success and failure condition, which you predefined. And if everything looks exactly how you expect, we move on to that next phase. So what happens if something doesn't behave as you expect? We'll automatically roll it back. So in this example, we can see we went out to Datadog, we did this query, and because of some of the data that we got back, it didn't pass the Datadog metric that we wanted, and we went back and we rolled back the deployment without any manual intervention. So those are just like a few examples of like how you can manage your deployments. And the other thing specific to Canary is like you can also have background verifications. So at any point during your deployment, you can actually run these queries in the background. It's not specific to a phase of traffic that is being sent. And if it doesn't, same idea, if it doesn't return exactly how you expect, we'll roll things back. So you can track all of this over time. And you can also see everything that's going on behind the scenes on both like the Kubernetes level and the resource level. So you'll see all of the relevant logs as it relates to your ongoing deployments, the different resources that have been created along the way. And then if you want to see, okay, what is the difference between the old state or old version and the new version, you'll be able to see that as well in the UI. And you can also track all of this through our CLI as well. So there's a pretty neat plugin that you can see as it relates to tracking your rollouts over time. So that's one example. And then also the same deployment, just want to show like a few other options that you have at any point during your rollout. So when you are monitoring your rollout and maybe something isn't returning as you would expect, you have a few different options at any point that you can actually pause the rollout. So if you need to stop shifting traffic and quickly debug something, you can pause it and then promote it to the next step after that. You can fully promote things, retry it if you've gone back and fixed things. All of that control is available to you. And we also get like a lot of questions on like how do we lock down permissions, right? I mentioned like multi-cloud, multi-cluster solution. Chances are you're going to have a lot of teams that might be looking at solutions for or might be interacting with OceanCD. So within the Spot platform is really like the first layer where we have like a very granular layer of permissions that you can set on each product. And then like specifically for, CD and Kubernetes, like we get a lot of questions around like, RBAC specifically, and all of that can be completely configured to make sure that we're meeting the needs for your rollouts. So you might want to tie things down by namespace. You might want to tie things down by cluster, whatever your use case is. Our team's here to make that work for you guys and tie that down a little bit further. So I also want to quickly answer one of the questions around pricing model. So OceanCD has two different pricing models. The first one is going to be like a per cluster price. So it's like a flat rate that you pay based on having our operator installed. And then if that doesn't work for you, there's also like a per service pricing model, because we have some customers that are looking at us for like their most advanced Canary deployments, and they are new to CD. They want to try the tool. So those are the two different models that we operate within. And then I think it's important to call out that like the Ocean suite of products that we offer at Spot by NetApp is like all things Kubernetes. So if you're already using our Ocean product for scaling your infrastructure, there's a free tier available to our customers to try out, get some feedback on the product, and things like that. So those are really the main ways to get involved with OceanCD. A couple other quick things to show you guys is when you first deploy our controller within your cluster, the first thing that we're going to do is like discover like all of the workloads running within the cluster. So we're going to see all of your deployments that are running, how many replicas, all things like that. And you'll notice that there is a Kubernetes deployment and then a Spot deployment. So the difference is a Spot deployment is something that we would be managing for you within OceanCD. And what that is just a Kubernetes custom resource definition, which requires you to change 2 lines within your YAML and deploy it. So I'm just going to click the first one that I see here just to show what a migration process looks like if it's a new Kubernetes deployment that you want us to manage. So when you figure out which one you want to migrate, you're going to change 2 lines on the Kubernetes deployment to tell us, okay, this is a Spot deployment. So you'll change the API version and kind so we know it's something that we should manage. And then if you're using the UI to do this migration, we'll also help you with a bunch of like predefined strategies. And everything that we are showing you here will also, we have a bunch of examples in our OceanCD public GitHub. So if you're looking to get started with Canary or rolling updates or specific traffic managers, things like that, we have templates on how to manage all of that. And then you'll create your rollout spec. So this is our way of knowing, okay, this is like the cluster that we're working with. This is the specific deployment and what to do in the event of a failure. We'll go ahead and click create. And then once we've created that, we're good to start managing the deployment. So it's really a couple clicks and then you'll be up and running. And if you're using like any traffic manager tool, like Istio, for example, we have all of those examples that can be baked in on like both the UI and our GitHub as well. Okay, so I want to pause here again to see if there are any specific questions on the demo or any areas that you would like to deep dive in. Okay, so what I'd like to take a couple of minutes doing is show you guys a couple of resources that I think could be helpful for getting hands-on with OceanCD. So give me 1 second. Okay, so a couple of quick resources. So the Spot Inst GitHub page, and if you go to Spot OceanCD releases, we'll have a bunch of quick start guides and examples depending on whatever your use case might be. So let's say you're looking for Canary deployments, depending on whether you want to use our CLI or API, you can click into this and we'll provide you with a bunch of these different templates depending on what your use case is. So chances are we'll be able to give you a template based on whatever setup you're using. And of course, that's what our team is here to help our customers with. And I think one of the best ways to actually get hands-on with any of our products at Spot by NetApp is trying any of our free hands-on workshops. So what these workshops do is guide you like end-to-end on, okay, how do you install our cluster? It explains everything along the way that you are setting up. And then it will give you actually a bunch of predefined YAMLs where you can literally copy and paste these, deploy them into your cluster, and then in a matter of minutes, you'll be able to start triggering your first few rollouts. So we give a few different examples, again, depending on what your use case is. If you want to get started with Prometheus, and maybe you're new to Prometheus, you don't have it deployed yet, we'll show you how that can be deployed. And then we'll provide you with like a subsequent YAML file that you can manage and maintain within our CLI. So those are really the main things that I wanted to cover for you guys today. And of course, I want to pause here again to see if there are any questions or feedback. Okay. Sean, anything else on your end that you wanted to cover?
No, I think you've actually covered it all. I just, if you have any questions, if you'd like to see more about the application, you can visit our website at spot.io and sign up for a free demo and start testing it out. But other than that, I think you covered everything, Zach.
Awesome. Alexia, thank you again for having us on today, and we appreciate everybody's time.